Did you know that the Equal Rights Amendment was introduced in 1967 and it still hasn't passed? We need 38 states to agree that discrimination on the basis of sex is unconstitutional. We've had a record number of women running for office and winning, and still we have 23% of the House and 25% of the Senate. I'm getting tired of the novelty of the first female governor of this state, the first female African-American mayor of this city. When is it going to become the norm instead of the exception? How are these young women looking up and seeing someone that looks like them, preparing them for the future? We don't have enough female role models. We don't have enough visible women leaders. We don't have enough women in power. Girls are socialized to know when they come out, gender roles are already set. Men run the world. Men have the power. Men make the decisions. It's always the men that is the stronger one. And when these girls are coming out, who are they looking up to tell them that that's not the way it has to be? And where better to do that than in sports? All these millions of girls that play sports across the country, they could come out every day, and we're teaching them great things about life skills. But wouldn't it be great if we could teach them to watch how women lead? This is a path for you to take to get to the point where in this country, we have 50% of women in power. We have right now, less than 5% of women are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. So yes, when you look at men's basketball and 99% of the jobs go to men, why shouldn't 100 or 99% of the jobs in women's basketball go to women? Maybe it's because we only have 10% women athletic directors in Division I. People hire people who look like them, and that's the problem.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural Woman to Woman Shooting for Greatness event. My name is Aria O'Connell, and I am a senior at Bishop Guertin High School, a four-year member of the girls' varsity basketball team, and I have the honor of being tonight's Master of Ceremonies. On behalf of the Bishop Guertin girls' basketball program and our partners at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics here at St. Anselm College, I would like to welcome everyone to what will be an amazing event. Tonight, whether young or old, male or female, we all have the opportunity to learn a great deal from a group of extraordinary and inspiring females who will be discussing the important issues of empowering women in society. Our panel includes a group of accomplished women from business and industry, from news and entertainment, from the college coaching community, as well as politics. And we look forward to hearing from each of them about the lessons they've learned as they rose to the top of their respective professions. We will also have the opportunity to hear from three of our high school peers from Bedford High School, Pinkerton Academy, and Goffstown. They will talk about issues they believe are important to empowering young women. My teammates and I have competed for years against all three of tonight's student speakers and their teammates, either on the court or on the field, all over the state of New Hampshire. But this evening, and as we move forward in the future, we are all on the same team as young women ready to change the world. So, to the 200+ female student athletes here tonight from Bishop Guertin, Bedford, Pinkerton, Goffstown, Memorial, Portsmouth, Bishop Brady, Salem, St. Anselm College, and I'm sure more I don't even know about, I want to extend a very special welcome and thank you for being here. We have a very busy evening in store for you, so I'd like to get us started and am honored to introduce tonight's guest speaker. While she really needs no introduction, New Hampshire's Jeanne Shaheen is the first woman in U.S. history to be elected both a governor and a United States senator. She served as governor of New Hampshire from 1997 through 2003 and has served in the United States Senate since 2009. Senator Shaheen is a champion for women here at home and around the globe, and has worked tirelessly on legislation to better investigate and prosecute violent crimes against women. In 2016, President Obama signed into law the Shaheen-authored Sexual Assault Survivors' Right Act, a federal bill of rights for sexual assault survivors. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct privilege and honor to introduce tonight's guest speaker, United States Senator Jeanne Shaheen.
Good evening, everyone. So exciting for me to be with you, all of you this evening. The lights are making it a little hard to see, but I know we have, the balcony is full, as well as the seats down here. And we have 250 young women athletes in the audience, is that right? Yes, it's great. And what do you think? Is it time to change that power dynamic that the coach was talking about? Yeah, Muffet McGraw got it right? Thank you to Aria for that very generous introduction and for the great job that you're doing. I love you're talking about the point that even though as student athletes you've competed against each other, that we've also got to work together as we look at changing the roles that women can play in our society. I'm also pleased to be here with Sister Paula, president of Rivier University, one of the sponsors of tonight's event, and at St. A's, where the Institute of Politics does such a great job here with Neil Levesque as its leader, and of course, Coach Craik, who is Bishop Guertin's women's basketball coach, which is also sponsoring tonight's event. And my colleague, former colleague, Senator Ayotte, who is going to be moderating tonight's panel, and the really the accomplished women who are going to be part of that panel, talking about how they've overcome challenges that they've met in the workplace. You know, I'm especially pleased to be here with all these basketball players because as a high school and college student, I played women's basketball. And at the time I played, there were fewer than 100 colleges and universities that had intercollegiate athletics for women. I really should thank my coach, my college basketball coach, Coach Baker, for setting me on a path to politics. Because when I was in college, I was in both the student government and I played women's basketball. And I remember at the end of my sophomore year, Coach Baker called me into her office and she said, I think Miss Bowers, my maiden name was Bowers, she said, I think Miss Bowers, you can either be in student government or you can play basketball. And you have to make a decision about which one you want to do. Well, as you can tell because I'm here, I made the decision to stay in student government and continued to participate as someone who felt like one of the ways for us to change the things we're concerned about in our society is through government. And it has been exciting to me to see the difference that young women are making across this country. One of the things that I think has really changed sports for women has been Title IX. In 1972, when Title IX was signed into law, only about 7% of high school girls played sports. Interscholastic sports. By 2014, 41% of girls were participating in high school sports. So we went from fewer than 300,000 young women across this country to more than 3 million. And Title IX has not just made a difference in terms of young women's ability to play sports and to be able to participate, but it's also, I would argue, made a difference in the leadership abilities of women once they get out of school and are in the workplace. And I think you'll hear that from some of the panelists tonight. Thankfully, a lot has changed since those days. I remember when I first got elected governor, one of the questions I often got was, what's it like to be the first woman governor? Well, my standard answer was, I don't know, because I've never been a man governor. As you heard the coach say in that video, right now, more women are serving in Congress than at any time in American history. We have 25 women in the Senate. We have the highest percentage of women in the House of any time. And yet, at the rate we're going at electing women, it's going to be more than 100 years before we reach parity in Congress. Well, I'm not willing to wait 100 years, and my bet is that all you student athletes in this audience are not willing to wait 100 years either, right? Because it does make a difference when women are at the table. And it makes a difference whether it's at a town meeting, whether it's in a boardroom, or whether it's in Washington, D.C. in the halls of Congress. And the reason it makes a difference is pretty obvious, I think. And that is, as women, we bring to whatever we do the experiences that we've had, just like men do. And for women, our experiences are different. They're not better, they're not worse, but they are different than men's. And it's important to have the women's perspective at the table, no matter what the issue is or what the setting is. There are just too many challenges to make decisions that ignore 50% of our population. And I think women are uniquely qualified to meet the challenges that we face. You know, a friend once said to me, women run for office because they want to accomplish something. They want to see change, whether it's in their schools, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's with the challenges that they're facing in the workplace, sexual assault, sexual harassment. And I believe that. I think women are focused on results, on trying to make a difference and worry less about who gets the credit. One of the experiences that Senator Ayotte and I had when we were in the Senate was in 2013 when the government was shut down. Not a happy time, but it was the women in the Senate who helped lead the effort to reopen government and who worked together to make sure that happened. And I think that's a reflection of much of what we see when women are engaged and have the opportunity to participate fully in whatever it is. Electing women isn't just the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do. But if we're going to reach that parity in less than 100 years, we need a whole lot of young women, like all of you in this audience, to run for office. You can start locally with your school board, with your board of selectmen, be a library trustee, doesn't matter what you run for. But think about elective office. You know, I served as the director of the Institute of Politics at the Kennedy School between being governor and being in the Senate. And one of the things that used to distress me was when I'd have a room full of undergrads and I would say to them, how many of you want to run for office someday? And almost every male hand in the room would go up. But usually maybe a quarter, some days it was a third of the young women. So we need to think about, as Coach McGrath did, about making sure that there are role models so that young women understand and aspire to run for office. Because I think it's important no matter what field you get into. But one thing I know is that if we change policy around equality for people, then that affects everybody. So congratulations to all of you for what you're doing. I look forward to seeing the kind of leaders that each of you become in the years ahead. And have a great time tonight. Enjoy listening to this panel. They will have lots of wisdom for you to think about as you think about what you do next in your lives. Thank you. Okay, so I get to be here long enough to ask a few questions before I have to, or answer a few questions. I would like to ask a few, but before I go on to my next event. So can I ask anyone here would like to ask a question? And can I just ask one thing, that you introduce yourself and tell us if you're a student, where you go to school, if you're affiliated with an organization, what the organization is.
I'm Abby Smith. I'm a senior at Guertin High School, and I would like to ask, what can I do to make a difference even though I can't vote yet?
Well, you can participate in politics, even though you may not be able to vote. You can work on a campaign. Go find the candidate you like. If you care about an issue, think about how you can get involved in that issue. If it's health care, talk to whatever is happening in your community, whether it's if you have a hospital in your community, if you have doctors, talk to them about what you can do to be involved there. You can also write letters to the editor. You can call in radio stations. You can organize students. When I first ran for governor, my daughter was in college. She was a senior in college. And one of the things, she had been offered a Fulbright scholarship, and she decided that she would rather come home and help in the campaign. And so what she did was to go to high school campuses across the state and organize students. There are a lot of students who can vote, who just need somebody to help them know how to register to vote and why it makes a difference. And it does make a difference. You know, our democracy only works if we all participate in it. And if I had my way, I would say you graduate with a diploma in one hand and a voter registration card in the other. Because what we know is that if you vote in 2 to 3 elections as a young person, then you will tend to vote for the rest of your life. So making sure that young people understand why it's so important and why it makes a difference. If we're going to address climate change, if we're going to address immigration reform, if we're going to make sure there are business opportunities for the future, make sure you have access to health care, we need your voices at the table. Next question. Yes, up there.
Hi, my name is Corinne Lamont. I'm from Portsmouth High School. My coaches always talk about how important grit and perseverance is on the volleyball court, and I was wondering how that carries over into leadership positions in the workplace.
Well, I have to admit that we have a plant here. Portsmouth's coach is Madison Lightfoot, who actually works on my staff, so we're delighted to have Portsmouth's volleyball team here. I will also tell you that my daughter, who came to work on the campaign, also played volleyball, so we're a big volleyball family. But absolutely, what you learn, whether it's on the volleyball court, or on the basketball court, or the field hockey, or on the field, playing field hockey, whatever it is, having that determination, the discipline to be successful, to not quit when you're behind, to work together, the teamwork that is so important. All of that makes you successful when you get into the workplace. And developing those skills as an athlete is really important. It's one of the reasons why I believe Title IX has made such a difference for young women, because it isn't just about giving you access, equal access, although we're not quite there in terms of equality yet in sports, but it's opened the doors to participation in a way that has tremendous carryover in the future as you think about what you do next. So, thank you. Yes. We'll let one of the adults talk.
Geraldine Furlands, I started a corporation, as you know, Senator, 40 years ago, okay? You spoke earlier, how can you encourage women to bring their femininity to the workplace and not, submit or to the lack of confidence you may have about your own intuition? So I know you have to do that every day, and I think perhaps you could speak to it to the rest of the organization. Thank
you, Geraldine. Did everybody hear her question? It was about how do you how do you maintain your self-confidence as a woman, basically, when you're in the workplace and you may be challenged all the time? And I think it's not easy, as you know, as somebody who started a company when it was much harder for women to start businesses. But I think you have to keep at it. You have to have a strong support system. I've been very lucky to have a family that's very supportive. And you also have to have confidence in your own abilities, which I know you do, even when it's tough. And it gets tough for all of us, you know. It gets tough no matter what your level of success. There are still times when you doubt whether you're doing the right thing, when you hear criticism from people and you're not sure. And in public office, you get that a lot, as you can imagine. But trying to think about why you're doing things and doing them for the right reasons and trying to keep in mind what your goals are and how best to get there, I think is something that we would all benefit from. And I would also add, at a time in this country when there are so many divisions, it's really important, I think, for us to listen to each other, to respect somebody's opinion that may not agree with ours, but to think about how we can work together despite our differences. That's what this country was founded on. And we've got to get back to that, because that's going to be important for our future, for the future of all these young athletes here, to think about how we work together to move forward. So thank you all very much. All right, I get one too.
You can take them off the stage. You can take that off stage. Senator Shaheen, thank you very much for being with us tonight. We know your evening is packed with numerous commitments, and we appreciate you taking the time to be here. It is now time for the game to begin, and like Senator Shaheen, our moderator for tonight's panel event needs no introduction. Kelly Ayotte represented New Hampshire in the United States Senate from 2011 to 2016, where she chaired the Armed Services Subcommittee on Readiness and Commerce, and she also chaired the Commerce Subcommittee on Aviation Operations. From 2004 to 2009, Senator Ayotte served as New Hampshire's first female Attorney General, having been appointed to that position by Republican Governor Craig Benson and reappointed twice by Democratic Governor John Lynch. Senator Ayotte currently serves on the board of directors of numerous publicly traded and private corporations, and most important, is the proud mom of a current Bishop Guertin female student athlete in attendance this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to introduce tonight's moderator and one of the countless BG supermoms in attendance this evening, Senator Kelly Ayotte.
Thank you, Aria. I am thrilled to be here tonight and to really start this program of an incredible panel of accomplished women. And so tonight, we're going to do this a little bit like quarters. We've got different topics for all of you, and I'm just thrilled to see this audience and so many phenomenal young women who are here to be part of this discussion. So tonight, you will see the complete bios of our incredible panel in your program. So I'm just going to touch on some of their accomplishments. Starting first with Sarah Behn. Sarah is the head women's basketball coach at Brown University. And before that, she coached at UMass Lowell. And for all the basketball players in the audience, and I know there are a few out there, here's some inspiration for Coach Behn. She played at Boston College, where she was the school's all-time leading scorer and the very first female athlete to have her uniform number retired. Can you imagine? Amazing. Also tonight on our panel, Sandy Cleary, CEO of SLC Group Holdings. She is an award-winning entrepreneur, someone who founded her own company, CrewCon, Cruise Outlet, and guess what? She started it in her mother's basement. Incredible. And she built it to be one of the largest sellers of cruises in North America. She is also a very active philanthropist in New Hampshire and is active in investing and in mentoring entrepreneurs across the country. Added to our panel, another phenomenal woman, McCall Gosselin, Vice President of Communications at Planet Fitness. She serves as a board member of the Manchester Boys and Girls Club and is a proud grad of Central High School in Manchester, so a New Hampshire native. With us as well is Alisha McDevitt, a media leader, news director at WMUR TV. I'm sure many of you have seen that. WMUR is New Hampshire's only statewide network-affiliated station. She has produced many important specials and debates for WMUR and is a New England Emmy Award winner. Finally, last but not least, we have Dianne Mercier, who is a great New Hampshire business leader. She is Senior Vice President and New Hampshire President of People's United Bank. Dianne, who I've known for many years, is involved in several important New Hampshire charities, including the Manchester Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA. And she's had so many awards that she's received in New Hampshire, but I wanted to highlight that in 2017, she was named Citizen of the Year by the Manchester Chamber of Commerce. Will you join me in welcoming this incredible panel of women out on the stage? All right, so we're going to get right to it. We all saw the video at the beginning with Coach Muffet McGraw. And unfortunately, what she talked about is that there are too few women in leadership at every level, whether it's in business, whether it's in politics, whether it's in the nonprofit sector. We can look at all of it and say there need to be more women involved. And so I'm going to start first with our coach here, Coach Behn, and ask her, you know, why is it that there are so few women, as Muffet McGraw talked about, coaching at an elite level like you are? And what are some of the challenges that you came upon along the way?
Okay, I would think that there's a few reasons that could be possible answers to your question. One of them may be that there are a lot of male ADs in all of the conferences across the country. It's changing, and the amount of women is growing in the AD position. In fact, Yale University in the Ivy League, where I coach, just hired a woman 1 year ago, and that was sort of a historic hire. So it's possible that men do tend to hire men.
So how did you overcome that? How did you get through that challenge to be coaching? You coached at UMass, right? Mm-hmm. And then you also, I mean, to coach at Brown University is incredible.
Well, you know, I worked hard to work my way up and have different opportunities, and it's extremely competitive to get a Division III, II, and I job. My father had played basketball at Brown, and we have a wonderful athletic director, Jack Hayes, and you know, I'm sure he went after many people, and I was able to get in front of him and impress him and get that opportunity 5 years ago. But I think, so some of it may have to do with the leadership and who they choose. And maybe there is another school of thought that some women may shy away from this business. All of the jobs that we have are so challenging, and any working mom knows that it's challenging no matter what you do. But I would say in this profession, I can speak to the fact that it is a lot of nights like you, and a lot of weekends and holidays, and it is challenging if you also desire to have a family and do those things. So that could be a second reason. But
yeah. And would you encourage, you love your job?
I love my job. I love my job.
And we've got a few basketball players out there. So
I know a lot of the basketball players in this room, actually.
I bet you do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Well, that's great. And Sandy, a woman entrepreneur, really started CrewCon out of a basement, your mother's basement, amazing. What kind of lessons did you learn along the way? I know that many women think about starting their own business. What would you say to them? What are some of the things you learned?
The first lesson was not to eat Pop-Tarts, because I actually burned down my mother's kitchen when I was actually cooking a Pop-Tart one day and was on a sales call.
Well, that takes one food
no Pop-Tarts.
off the table.
Yeah. In the travel industry, there wasn't a lot of prejudice or obstacles for women, so I was actually very, very lucky. My first career, however, I graduated as an engineer and worked for 17 years building and designing guidance systems for ballistic missiles for the government. That was a male-dominated industry. And I think one of the main reasons that I did so well in that industry is because I never thought of myself as a woman. I actually went in there and I said, I'm a person, I'm your equal, and listen to me. And they did. So you had to obviously prove your skills, but that was something that you just ended up where once you were part of that team and you realized, they realized that you had the capabilities as part of that team, they didn't look at you as a female either. They looked at you as a member of the team. And that's one of the big things that I would always say is you hold your head high and you have confidence when you walk in that room, because you know your job and you are the one that, you only have one chance to make a first impression, okay? Because that first time that they meet you, it's always going to be in their heads. So all of a sudden now, you now are going to prove yourself as one of the peers and not as a female or a male. So
I actually can relate to this because when I got elected to the Senate, I was the only woman elected that year. And I went first time to see where my desk was in the Senate floor so I'd know what to do when I voted. And the first time I sat in my desk, the doorman came over and said, that desk is for senators only. And I said, well, I worked kind of hard to get elected here. And so I know what this idea is about. Sometimes you get in a situation and you don't maybe look the same as everyone else, but putting your head up and just saying, hey, I'm a senator too. So I appreciate that, of just putting your head up when sometimes people stereotype you and you don't even realize it. So McCall, I have to ask you, Central High grad, New Hampshire.
Any Centralers in the room?
New Hampshire, native, and here you are. You're the vice president of Planet Fitness. So we've got these phenomenal young women here. We hope that they can build a career here in New Hampshire. What are the challenges and opportunities that you found here in New Hampshire?
Yeah, so unlike a lot of high schoolers, when I was a senior at Central, I think I applied to 9 out of 10 schools that were as far away as possible, because I thought that, I really wanted to explore other places. But what I realized after being gone for many years, I went to college in Washington, D.C., interned there for several places, and then went to Boston, was that I discounted a lot of the opportunities around me and all of the great opportunities that were here in New Hampshire. So I would encourage everyone, if you want to stay in New Hampshire, there are a lot of opportunities for you. You can do your research, try to get internships. Manchester specifically is, a growing bed for technology companies today. And if you want to, branch out, certainly do that. Get great experience and experience different cultures, and you can come back. There's a lot of amazing companies in New Hampshire in our backyard, like Planet Fitness and Timberland and Lint and Stonyfield and many, many others. So don't discount it because it's a place where you grew up. Oftentimes as kids we want to fly the coop, and that's great, but New Hampshire is an amazing place for business. It's an amazing place to raise a family, and there are certainly opportunities here, as you can see from everyone on this panel. So.
And Alisha is someone who went to UNH, right? And now is the director of the newsroom at Channel 9. And so, Alisha, along the way, can you share a story with us or an opportunity that came along that allowed you to rise to the top as news director.
Sure, I certainly am homegrown too. I'm not from New Hampshire originally, but I've been here more than half my life now. And that's thanks to the opportunities at WMUR. I never thought when I walked through those doors that I would be there for as long as I had, but look for those opportunities because they do present themselves. Stand up, raise your hand, and believe in yourself. And I'll tell you, I didn't really believe in myself in the beginning. I was fortunate, I was hired by a woman. She left, she went to raise her children, and then I hired her back several years later, which was wonderful. It came full circle. We have a great professional relationship still to this day. But I do remember when I was in my late 20s and I was in the newsroom and we were going into an election year, and the station had plans for what they were going to do with specials. And another woman who was running the newsroom, and I've been fortunate in my role as news director, there have been more women in that role in my tenure at WMUR than men, which is really says something for that television station, I think. But the woman who was in my current role at that time came to me and said, we'd like you to be in charge, the producer in charge of our political coverage. And I said to her, are you sure? And she said, yes, I believe you can do this, but you need to believe you can do this too. And that gave me so much courage to believe in myself and to be able to raise my hand for the next thing because I thought, okay, somebody who is like-minded believes in me. So I would say, do not discount yourself. Know that you've got skills and believe in yourself and think to yourself that you can do it.
Thanks, Alisha. And Dianne, president of a bank, you do incredible things in the community here. What would you say about, you've risen to the top, and what about picking your career? How did you choose your career, and then how did that create the path to become president of a bank?
So I'm going to give a lot of people a lot of hope in this room. I was in the hospitality business, which I loved, but was not conducive to raising a family and having weekends off, and so somebody told me I should go apply for a job at a bank, and I did. And that was about 35 years ago. So I stumbled into it, or it found me. And so not all of us knows what we want to be as a youngster. Not all of us know what we want to do in college. And a great many of us don't know what we want to do when we get out of college. And yet we have to do something. And I'm a lifelong learner. I think that's probably my superpower is I'm a very curious person and I'm a really interested person. And so I could probably have ended up in any number of industries. I just happened to walk into a bank that day, but I could have walked into a hospital, or I could have walked into a university, or I could have walked into an insurance company, or I could have been exposed to politics. My orientation was really just to do the best thing that I could do at the time that I was doing it, and then those things led to other opportunities. So for those of you who aren't quite sure what it is that you want to do, it may find you. But I will say that Sandy said something that resonated with me, which is I never actually knew I was a woman in business. I was way too busy being curious about things than to see that inequity. So I was really unaware of it. And so it was never an obstacle for me. I mean, I'm not saying that wasn't an obstacle for me. I'm saying it wasn't an obstacle for me here.
So important. And Sandy, thinking about that early on, how did you stand up for yourself? You talked about standing up for yourself. How did you advocate for yourself? If you think about these young women starting out their career, how should they advocate for themselves?
I'm pretty loud, if you haven't noticed.
I love it. It's perfect.
I think, you know, when I went into, when I was in aerospace and was working with primarily men, it wasn't that I was a female that bothered them, it was that I was young. I mean, I was early 20s, and they were all guys that were in their 50s and kind of looked at me like, yeah, what does she know? And so women have different traits, and one of the traits that they really are exceptional in is being patient to the point where they can draw out certain things. They're better negotiators, they're better leaders in a lot of cases because they do have that nurturing factor. They know when people's birthdays are, they know, they bond with their employees. So the way that I had dealt with this age discrimination, so to speak, is the fact that we had a problem with the guidance system of the missile, and it was my company's job to figure out what the problem was. Well, these guys were so close to it that they refused to acknowledge that there was a problem because they did it and they did it right. So, new kid on the block doesn't know anything. So what I did is patiently, I went through and I asked questions in the way that they thought that they were educating me. And as they were answering those questions, I was kind of leading them through a decision tree. And the decision tree was actually resulting in them rethinking certain things that they had done. And ultimately, after a few weeks, we actually had discovered what the problem was. And obviously, they took credit for it. But, I was okay with that. I was okay with that. But we resolved it. So women have a different approach to how they interact with men and other women. So
I think Senator Shaheen said it well up here, and it's been said many times, it's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit, right? And I think really women bring that to the table. So we're going to be talking, you teed up perfectly about leadership in a minute, but I have to ask, one of the issues that women face are really, women are still paid 80 cents on the dollar for men for the same jobs. And we've seen the world champion women's soccer team actually sue the U.S. Soccer Federation because they're not being paid as well as the men. And I have to ask you, Coach, what do you think about that?
Well, when I think about equity in pay, there's a lot of things you have to look at. Number one, the progress made. I make a good income, and I probably make more money than a lot of women and men doing the same exact thing that I'm doing. So I come from a place of gratitude because the people before me made less, and they laid the foundation. Do I make as much as our our men's coach? No. And I don't make as much as the football coach. And I'm actually okay with that because I see it trending and I see people sticking up for us and for our rights. With the women's soccer team, not only do I think they deserve equal pay, I think they deserve more pay.
I agree.
I agree. To me, not only did they win, they had sold-out stadiums.
Yeah,
and
I mean, they were amazing.
Amazing. Right? And my daughter's 10 years old and plays soccer, and her group of little friends came over, and they couldn't wait to watch the games. And that's the power of athletics and the power of what they did. So that they should get paid the value of what they provided.
I would agree, and I know there's a few soccer players in the audience that would appreciate that as well, because what a phenomenal team that women's soccer team is. So Sandy teed it up well. We're going to talk, we've got on this stage some phenomenal women leaders. And, I happen to believe that if women were in at least an equal position as men to lead the world, as Senator Shaheen talked about, that it would be a better world. And so I would like to tee up a video about leadership, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about opportunities for leadership for women, and what kind of style do women bring to leadership that really make us effective?
We call upon our sisters around the world to be brave, to embrace the strength within themselves and realize their full potential.
I really have tried to make my choices thinking of the women that are going to be watching the films that I make. Hopefully playing characters they can identify with, feel inspired by.
I think a world where half of our countries and half of our companies were run by women would be a better world.
To be a part of something bigger than myself.
To ask the question, to continue crafting my personal brand.
We need more role models for other women and young girls.
To lean in and take my responsibility as a woman and as a leader.
To stand up and have a voice.
To let go of my fears.
To drive change.
I'm inspired to make room at the table for more women in my organization.
To show both my son and my daughter what a great leader looks like.
To step in and step up to my role. And to believe that it is fine to be perfectly imperfect.
To step into my authority, to stop holding back, and to fully use the gifts that are on the inside of me.
I'm inspired by the sheer possibility of what women can do.
So, Dianne, I want to start with you on this one, and everyone jump in. We need more women involved in leadership positions, and we know that we're underrepresented, whether it's in the House, the Senate, in the corporate boardroom. And so how do we create more opportunities for women in leadership, and how do we get more women involved to make sure that we can get to that position where we're not talking about female leadership anymore, we're just talking about leadership because there's equity?
So one, if I could, I want to talk about the pay, because this is a real practical issue for some women in this room, but pay equity. One really important law that was recently passed was that you can't ask people what they used to make, right? That has such an impact on women who, when you're already paid less and you go for your next job and you're asked how much you were paid before, then that next salary decision is based on just doing a tiny bit better than what you were making before. You're going to be guaranteed to stay. That guarantees that is going to keep you behind, right? It's going to keep you on the same trajectory. So that's one really, really, really important thing. Don't let anybody ask you how much you were making at your last job. It's none of their business. And two, do your research on when that position pays. Just do the research. Don't let anybody else tell you what happened. Very recently, I had a woman apply for a job to work in our company, and I said, what are your expectations for salary? And she told me what they were. And I said, okay, thank you. And within a couple of days, I was calling her back to talk to her about the process for the position, and she said, I know I asked for this, but I could do it for a little bit less. And I said, okay, thank you. I'll call you back in a couple of days. And so I did call her back, and I called her back, and I offered her the job at the salary that were her salary expectations. And I said to her, don't you ever do that again to yourself. And she deserves even more money than that now. But she asked for that money because she knew what that job, she had done her research for what that job was paying. But she wasn't sure that she deserved that. And that, don't ever do that to yourself. So how to get more women into leadership roles? Okay, get them in kindergarten first, right? Everything starts in kindergarten. And so it's serious. All this work that we're doing as a state and a society about getting education for everyone, that helps little girls more than you can possibly imagine. Sports helps little girls more than you can possibly imagine. I didn't participate in sports, and I have a sense of the absence of that from my life. But what are the things that you can do right now to impact women? You actually have to make an effort, right? Because a lot of women just aren't standing up for themselves, and so it still requires an effort on the part of women who are in leadership roles right now to go out and pull them forward.
I actually have a theory on that. My experience has been that often women have to be asked to step up for leadership, where men, they kind of look in the mirror. I mean, at least my experience in politics was this way. They look in the mirror and they say, I see a senator. And then they get elected senator and they look in the mirror and they go, I see a president. And often, women, I bet you if you asked Jeanne Shaheen, she would have said, someone asked me to run that first time. I know someone asked me to run. Alisha, what do you think about that? What do you think that, how do we have it so that women know, we're asking you, please step up, and do you see that difference where sometimes we're not putting ourselves forward even though we're totally qualified?
I think that's true. And I see it in my own newsroom, and I see it in my own life, and I've seen it in myself, frankly. The story that I told you earlier, I didn't believe in myself. And the truth is, you as young women have the same skill set. And oftentimes you're more skilled, but you've got to believe in your heart that you can do it. You have to look at yourself and say, what is it that I want to do? What is my goal? And you set that goal, and you do your own research, and you figure out, how do I get there? And don't wait to be asked. Believe in yourselves. And to Diane's point, I have an 11-year-old boy. He goes to Lego camp every year. There are no girls in his Lego robotics camp, none. And it does start young. Believe that you can do things. Little girls can build robots too. Little girls can work on missiles. Little girls, you have the same brain power, you have the same skills, you just need to get out there and believe that you can do it. And I see in my newsroom, I tell the young women that work for me, raise your hand. Do not wait to be asked, because sometimes life gets really busy and the people might not recognize, because you're working with your head down, and they might not recognize that you really want to do that job or you really want to move to the next level. So make sure that you advocate for yourself.
And what do you think about that, Sarah?
I'd like to echo what they both just said, but I would add my advice to the students in the room to help advocate for yourself and to maybe get yourself into a position of leadership would be to take some courses that could help you communicate more clearly and with more confidence, because we all struggle with confidence. I took a class at Boston College, public speaking. I also took the elements of debate, and I wasn't as comfortable at the beginning, really, really nervous. But those skills carry over to no matter what passion you find, whatever job you end up doing, you're going to have to present your knowledge and your theories to other people and have them buy into that. So I feel like some of those classes go a really long way for whatever you end up doing, and could really be helpful.
I can so relate to that from my own journey of, being out there in public so much that it's not a natural thing. And so, there are some people that kind of naturally have a little bit of that, but I never did. And so great advice. And McCall, do you have any experiences you want to share about where you had to be asked, or you stood up for yourself and said, I'm going to charge forward?
Yeah, I think, one thing that's really resonated with me with this panel is something that I actually heard at a conference recently, and it was called Impostor Syndrome. And it was hard to sort of, for me, pinpoint exactly what that feeling was. And I think for women, it's often that we don't believe in ourselves, or we think we're faking it until we are discovered or until we make it, and maybe there's some of that in business. But I think it's very important to raise your hand, and I've had multiple projects where maybe I felt like I'm not ready for this next step. But it is empowering to raise your hand, and after you do it one time or two times, it gets a lot easier. I also think to get more women in leadership positions, it's really important to seek out mentors and to mentor other young women, and particularly with women in business, in competitive environments. We don't always, I shouldn't say we, there are people that don't always believe that, women should lift up other women, because there are so few positions at the top that maybe they don't want to share it with others. And I would encourage you all to do that, to mentor young women, to encourage your colleagues and give kudos where it's due and praise where it's due, because all of those things, believing in yourself and supporting other women, can really make a huge impact.
Sandy, you really live that, because you're mentoring other women now, other women entrepreneurs. And did you have a mentor along the way? How do you find a mentor? Because I think that's really important. What McCall just talked about, I know in my own life that's been really important to have someone that I can look up to ask for advice.
I do mentor a lot of women now. Diane's nicer than I am, because she is willing to pull somebody up. I don't want to pull somebody up. I want somebody to say, I want to do it, and this is what I want to do. And if you tell me that, then I'm going to take your hand and I'm going to say, okay, this is how you do it. But you've got to be the one that really is willing to put in the time, willing to put in the effort, and has the desire and the passion. And that's actually what my mentor was actually my brother, who had since passed away. But he had always told me, he says, if you do what you love, you'll always be successful at it. And you're the only one that has to look at yourself in the mirror every day. You have to be passionate about what you're doing. And when you're passionate about it, everyone around you sees it, and everyone around you feels the confidence that you feel. So I do believe that you should and could have a mentor, but you've got to be the one that seeks them out. You have to be the one that seeks them out and says, this is what I want. And then that person will hopefully take your hand and show you exactly what you should be doing to get to that next level.
Thank you. And Sarah, you must have had a mentor along the way. I mean, your amazing success and phenomenal accomplishments as an athlete, but now as a coach. And I think in sports, mentoring is really important.
Right, my high school basketball coach played basketball at Providence College. She was a triplet. She had an amazing personality and leadership style, and became a phenomenal mom while she coached us. And sort of got into the back of my head, what I might want to do someday when I stopped playing would be to try to give back like she had done to me.
Wow, that's great. So Dianne, I want to ask, what types of traits, when we think about leadership, because that's really what we're talking about, what kind of qualities do good leaders bring to the table, and what have you learned along the way? Because I found even in my own leadership journey, you learn a lot, and you become better, you hope, along the way with what you're doing.
Yeah. So as you ascend in leadership roles and responsibilities, and you have more oversight, which means you impact more people, it becomes more about your behaviors than it is about your skills. When you're doing really technical work, then it is very much about your technical skills. But once you start leading people, it becomes less about that, because most of the people that you're competing with will have a similar set of technical skills. And so you really need to start focusing on how it is that you impact others, and how other people respond to you, and how you move them, and the sense that you give them, and the meaning that you get. And so I think it's particularly important to pay attention to how it is that that you're interacting and influencing people, because it really doesn't matter who's right. I mean, that's the biggest con game in the world, to have people think that it's important to be right. That is the least important thing you need to be. What you need to be is successful and useful and helpful and skillful. You don't actually ever really need to be right. And so I think once you start letting go of some of those old traditional ways of thinking about what success looks like, and I think really good leaders, and this just, this isn't about management, this is even about leading yourself. I can't remember the last job that I got, that I actually received, that I was even remotely qualified for.
I can relate to this.
Right? I mean, were you qualified to be senator when you became senator?
Don't answer that.
What does that look like?
Let me tell you, what was even more intimidating is, becoming the first woman attorney general, chief law enforcement officer, and, as a really pretty young woman. And, all those police chiefs, and you'd walk in. I mean, we all have that feeling. And what worries me is sometimes my experience, and I'd love to get the panel's impression on this, is as women, sometimes we think there's this one other qualification we need to get to put ourselves out there. And the bottom line is we have to just take the leap and push ourselves out of our comfort zone.
What you need to know is you need to know that you can figure it out.
Right.
That is all you need to know in life, is that you can figure it out. Hopefully you will never again get another job that you're qualified for. Don't look for it. Go for the jobs that you're not qualified for. They're so much more interesting. And then you can figure it out.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm guessing, Sandy, when you went, obviously, from being an engineer to starting this incredible company, that you didn't quite think you knew everything then about what it means to run a business.
I knew nothing.
Yeah,
I knew nothing. I knew I liked to cruise, and that was about it. So, and I knew my mom was going to give me free rent in the basement. So, but I knew nothing, and you absolutely positively learn it. And, you know, fast forward, I grew that company with a great team to $135 million. We had over 120 employees. And 2 years ago, I sold it for a boat ton of money. But since then, you know, I had my core team, and I knew I wasn't done yet because I could go retire to Fiji and be fanned by Cabana Boys, but, which I might do in a few years. But we knew we had something left in us, and we decided that what we wanted to do as a group, a very small group because I got to take my core with me, was that we were going to start an investment company and actually invest in startups and young entrepreneurs. And again, we're learning it as we go. But we have had some tremendous success already. But again, it's all about learning. I wasn't qualified to do that, but you know what? It's working. So.
I would say it's more than working, but I think what you're hearing from our panelists about leadership is put yourself out there, and you're not going to know everything, but you can learn along the way. Don't hold yourself back and go for it. And so now I'd like to transition because we have some incredible speakers that are coming up here. So the first speaker that I would like to welcome up on stage is Emma Rosenbaum, who is a senior at Bedford High School. And let me tell you a little bit about Emma. She is a leader. She's co-captain of the varsity women's basketball team at Bedford High School. She is creator and publisher of the Runaway Bulldog, Bedford High School's independent newspaper. Emma spent last summer as one of only 83 high school students in the entire country who was invited to be a resident at Northwestern University's prestigious Metal Journalism Institute. Would you please join me in welcoming Emma Rosenbaum to the stage?
Thank you, Senator. I feel like I've always heard the phrase, "you can do anything." Like teachers and other adults just spouted it at me as a kid. My mom was so perplexed when I told her that, I got a little worried. I had to make sure I wasn't alone, that everyone had heard this and I wasn't just some superstar prodigy. So I did what every person does when they need answers. I surveyed my Instagram followers. I found that every single one of them, at some point in their life, has heard the same thing. But what does it mean, you can do anything? What's the point of saying that to a kid? Is it an attempt at empowerment? Because what does empowerment even mean? Like, you can do anything, it's used frequently, but before this presentation, I could not have defined it for you. A month ago, when I was asked to do this, and I came up with my topic, I tried to explain it to my dad. I'm trying to talk about empowerment and the importance of activism for empowerment. He looked at me and said, "What do you mean by empowerment?" So I Googled it. Oxford Dictionary, the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. Collins Dictionary, the process of giving a person or group power and status in a particular situation. Merriam-Webster, the act of empowering someone. It's not particularly helpful. But they define empower as promoting the self-actualization or influence of. And self-actualization is a process. So empowerment is a process, and if it's a process, then empowering women starts with girls. We're here tonight to talk about how to empower women, how to make a change. This is activism, identifying a problem, voicing our ideas and opinions, and trying to take action. And we, young women and girls, need to be a part of it. I wanted to look at the most prominent example of teenage activism right now. I hope everyone knows who that is. I recommend pretending if you don't. It's Greta Thunberg, 16-year-old climate activist, possibly just that Swedish girl everyone's talking about. But since she was 8 years old, she has been itching to do something about climate change. On August 20th, 2018, she skipped school and sat outside the Swedish parliament by herself. After that very day, people took notice of her and started to join her. She began to skip school almost every Friday to protest. On August 28th, 2019, a little over a year after her initial protest, she arrived in the US after sailing across the Atlantic. On September 18th, she testified before Congress. On September 20th, she led the largest climate protest in history. And on September 23rd, she spoke to the UN, or yelled at them. So what? She's made some noise. She's gotten people's attention. But has she truly made a tangible change? I mean, yes, she's brought awareness. I don't want to undercut what she's done in any way. But she's gotten halfway, and she needs adults to get the full way there. Does anyone know what happened after she spoke with Congress? Did they talk about making a plan for action? Was the idea of a bill thrown around? What about after she spoke with the UN? Let's look at what people said in response to her speeches and protests. Theresa May's office. Everyone wants young people to be engaged, but it's important to emphasize that disruption wastes lesson time. That time is crucial for young people so they can develop into the top scientists and advocates we need to tackle this problem. Vladimir Putin. I'm sure Greta is a very kind and sincere girl, but adults must do everything not to bring teenagers and children into extreme situations. If we want to be effective, we must stay professional. Professor William Stewart of Georgetown Law. Adult activists use children to advance their agendas and silence their critics. Ms. Thunberg serves as a tool for professional activists. There's this notion out there that if you're in high school or you're a kid, you don't know anything. Your opinions automatically don't matter. While listening to the quotes I just read, I'm sure there are adults in this room who made faces or thought, oh, I disagree with that. I'm sure there are adults across the country and the world that would have the same reaction. But do you truly mean it? I chose to look at Greta for two reasons. She's an example of a teenager not being taken very seriously, in that most adults only seem to be listening to her. And she's a special case of a girl who took her own initiative. So she illustrates two problems. Only a small percentage of girls feel empowered to take action like she did. And when they do, they are not treated as women, but as kids trying to play in the real world. Greta said at one protest, "It's annoying when people say, oh, you children, you young people are the hope. You will save the world. I think it would be helpful if you could help us just a little bit." So, our goal tonight, empowering women. I said it's a process that starts with us, but really it's a cycle that starts with all adult women and men. You want to build us up? You should be asking us from a very young age, what do you think? How do you think we can solve this? That may be a teacher asking a little girl, how can we make morning drop-off more efficient? Or a 4th grade girls basketball travel coach asking a player, how can we make this offense more effective? Or a high school girls basketball coach asking a freshman on varsity, what's the best way to bond as a team? Or the school board asking a female student, what's the best way to teach kids about sexual assault to stop it from happening? Don't just tell us we can do anything. Show us, ask our opinions, show us how to make our ideas heard and how to take action. Essentially, teach us how to be activists. I think that if every girl grew up that way, having adult conversations and being treated as equals in their houses, schools, teams, and communities, they would feel empowered, like they could do anything. There is no reason why girls cannot make changes on a local, regional, or national level. But that's up to you. We need you to teach us activism, and we need you to listen to us when we come to you with our initiatives. Not just nodding your head along, but actively listening, simultaneously thinking, how can I help make this person's voice heard? This event tonight was inspired by Muffet McGraw, who said she's getting tired of the novelty of the first female governor of this state or the first female African-American mayor of this city. I agree. But I'm also getting tired of the novelty of girls taking a stand against something they believe in. Why is it that when adults tackle female issues, whether it's stopping sexual assault or increasing the number of women in STEM, no one thinks to ask girls what to do? Thank you.
What an awesome speech, Emma. Thank you so much. You are empowering us, so we appreciate it. And now I would like to welcome another phenomenal young woman, Jessie Ames, who is a senior at Pinkerton Academy, also co-captain of the women's varsity basketball team, and a great student and member of multiple honor societies. Jessie, we'd love to welcome you to the stage.
Sixth grade was one of the best years of my life. It might sound crazy, but it was the only time in my life where I truly felt free. I didn't care about the pressures of fitting in or being perfect. I was just me and I rolled with it. When I walked around, I thought, I am who I am, I respect it, and that's all. This mindset started because of a field trip. Shortly after the beginning of the school year, I went to a kindness conference at UNH. There are many acts and inspirational speakers, but one stood out in particular. She was a model who spoke about how she struggled with self-esteem. When I saw this beautiful model up on stage talking about how she struggled with self-confidence, I sat in my seat and I thought, how could I even compare? And then, almost like she read my mind, she said, stop comparing yourself to others. Be you. Now, I don't know what it was that triggered me to walk the walk that night instead of telling myself I would do it, but that night I did it. I went home and I stood in front of the mirror. I saw who I was, what I liked and what I didn't like. I cataloged the things I considered imperfections I couldn't change and made a list. The birthmark on my back, my stretch marks, my body hair, those are some of the things I didn't like, but they're things no one else would notice naturally. In that way, I was able to look in the mirror and see who I was, not the airbrushed, perfect girl that many girls think they have to be, and I said, I'm me, and that's her. I don't have to compare myself to anyone. From that night on, whenever I saw my reflection in the mirror, I saw my sweaty basketball, clarinet playing, sweatshirt wearing, unapologetic self and said, hey, that's me. And that was it. At the time, that was all it took to be confident. The thing about confidence is that it's completely against what you think it should be. It's so easy to stand in the mirror and say, if I stand up straight, people will think I'm confident. Or, if I smile, people will think I'm beautiful. True confidence is hard. It's a never-ending work in progress, a day-to-day struggle. It comes from when you decide, I don't mind what other people think. It comes from standing in the mirror, summoning the courage to see your flaws, and respecting them. Confidence, in its most basic form, is acceptance. During sophomore year, I met my best friend and life was good. Things were finally going my way, and I felt like I knew myself. Little did I know I was about to face a huge struggle. Life was better than ever until my sister found a tiny bald spot in my hair that spring. I don't know why it happened. It could have been stress or something genetic. The summer between sophomore and junior year, the bald spot grew to 3 inches in diameter, and I suffered hair loss all over my scalp. Every day for 3 months, I woke up to clumps of hair in my bed. Every time I took a shower, I could feel the hair sticking to my body, my hands. Every time I looked in the mirror, I could see my hairline receding further and further back. There was no escape. I worried that I was going to go completely bald. I was terrified that it would never come back. It was during this time that the auditions for drum major, one of the conductors and student leaders of a marching band, were announced. When Mr. Adams, the band director, made the announcement, my heart started beating because I knew, deep down, that I wanted to try. I wanted to try because I love marching band, because I found a home in it, and I wanted to share this home with others. But my brain told me, it will be too stressful. It will make your hair fall out even more. I asked Mr. A for the audition paper. It wasn't until I was writing this talk that I realized that was the first time I truly told myself, I'm not going to let hair loss beat me. And I got the spot. I became drum major, and it was great for 5 minutes, and then I realized, oh my God, I have to tell Mr. Adams before it's too late. So I summoned my courage. I walked over, and I told him. Without thinking twice, he asked me 3 simple questions. Will it affect your body? No. Will it affect your mind? No. Will it affect your soul? No. Then it doesn't matter. Mr. Adams accepted me without hesitation. He had no idea that he was one of the first people I told about going bald, or that I was losing hair in the first place. Honestly, it was probably pretty shocking. But that immediate acceptance is what made the difference. It took all my fear and turned it to dust. He gave me the confidence to know that the band was somewhere I would always be safe, no matter what I looked like, because they would always accept and be there for me. I don't know if he knows, but it's what gave me the strength to take the next big step. On August 12th of 2018, the night before band camp, my family took turns clipping off the little hair I had left. Alopecia had taken about 80% of my hair, and we cut off the rest, not knowing what would happen after. All throughout this struggle, my confidence only suffered slightly from worrying about what was causing my hair loss. When I cut off what was left, confidence wasn't an issue. When I looked in the mirror, I hadn't changed. I mean, yeah, my hair was a little different, but it looked great. The truth is, I had a tough time with self-esteem after I showed off my buzz cut to the world. I didn't struggle because I didn't think I was beautiful or because I thought it was humiliating. I struggled because every time I went into public and tried to hold my head up, there was someone telling me to put it back down. No matter how hard I tried, it was impossible to not see the stares, the second glances, the wide eyes that came with having a stark white bald spot against the little hair I had. It was impossible to not feel hurt by the whispers behind my back, the suggestions that I was a boy, and the obvious question lingering on everyone's lips. What happened to that girl? I lived through it, and I'm proud to say that I'm a better person because of it. The day after I had my buzz cut, I had a summer league basketball game. I walked into the gym, and when my team saw me, they all stared. It was terrifying for a moment, but as I got closer, I saw that they were all smiling. As we warmed up, nobody treated me differently, and the only thing unusual was when Maddie Mahoney said, "Does it feel weird?" And I said, "Yeah, it does." When I saw Busky at the game, she smiled. When I got home, she sent me a text, and all it said was, "Jessie, you are beautiful." My team accepted me without thinking twice. Empowerment lies in the details. It stands with the smiles, nods, and understanding that people share with each other without realizing. It exists in acceptance. It took me a long time to accept myself. I think what made the difference is the people who believed that I could do it and who let me believe that I was worthy of accepting myself. I will never look in a mirror and see 6th grade Jessie again. Over the years, I've been stripped bare and put back together. Almost every day, I think about where I might be if I had never gone bald or if I had never been a drum major or played basketball. Some days, I regret the choices I've made. But every day, I go back and stand in front of the mirror, and I accept the fact that life happens. I wear whatever I want because I like it. I hang out with whoever I want because we have fun together. I am who I am. It's not selfish to be yourself. It's selfish to put others down for being them. You may not realize when you hurt someone. We all do it. We laugh at people's ideas. We joke about people's mistakes. We stare a second too long at someone who looks different from us. Putting people down is universal, but it's something we can change. To accept is to empower. Every day we do things that break each other down and we don't realize it. All of us have taken a second glance or whispered something behind someone's back. So just be supportive. Be the person to help somebody believe in herself. Know that there is hope and that you can accept yourself too, because once we stop judging and instead accept who people are, the world will be changed in limitless ways. It is possible. I've seen it in my band, my team, and me. All we have to do is try, one person at a time. So the next time you look in a mirror, look a little closer, dig a little deeper, and believe that you are who you want to be. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Jessie, thank you so much for sharing that powerful and inspiring story with all of us. I would now like to welcome another phenomenal young woman who I happen to know personally and I'm always in awe of, Olivia Brannon, who is a senior from Goffstown High School. She plays 3 sports. She's a member of the National Honor Council at Goffstown High. And Liv is president of Empower, the school's women's empowerment group. And in her spare time, she organizes the food pantry also at Goffstown High School. Please join me in welcoming someone who I think is very special, Olivia Brannon, to the stage.
Thank you. High school is hard, especially as a girl. You are expected to do and be so many things. Be flawlessly beautiful. Wear makeup, but not that much. Be skinny, but not anorexic. Be athletic, but not over-competitive. Be strong, but not too strong. Be smart, but don't show it off. Get good grades. Do well on the SAT. Be in clubs. Volunteer. Get into college. Have lots of friends. And get a boyfriend. The list goes on. How are girls supposed to uphold these impossible expectations and still have a social life and good mental health? On top of all of that, women often tend to do everything by themselves and never ask for help. As soon as someone talks about their mental health, or God forbid, their mental illness, it is like they said a bad or dirty word. This leads to nothing good. It leads down a road that is very, very hard to get back from. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services says that in 2017, 41% of girls in high school reported that they felt sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 or more weeks in a row, so that they stopped doing some usual activities. And 22% seriously considered attempting suicide. These statistics are awful and frightening, and the first step to fixing it is talking about it and acknowledging that it is something happening and it is an extreme issue. To honor that, I would like to recognize that today, October 10th, is World Mental Health Day, a day meant to spread awareness to those who don't realize this problem, and so that people are not ashamed of the things they struggle with. Now, I'm going to share a story with you all. My cousin Zoe was beautiful, smart, kind, and driven. But most of all, she was independent. She paved her own path through high school, college, and into a career. She never asked for help. She was dating the love of her life for 6.5 years. They were so in love. It turned out that her boyfriend had been struggling from mental illness, and she was trying to take care of him all by herself without any help. She didn't reach out to family members or friends, and neither did he. This mental illness ended up taking her life and his. My beautiful cousin was 21 when her life ended. She had a whole life ahead of her, full of success and happiness. I wouldn't wish what they went through or what my family and I have gone through on anyone. So I'm going to leave you with this. Please, 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 ask for help when you or a loved one needs it. Don't go through it alone. If you want to learn more about resources that will get you or anyone help, you can go online to the National Alliance on Mental Illness or NAMI websites. The links are nami.org or locally naminh.org. Secondly, talk about mental health and illness. We need to break this stigma. Lastly, take care of yourself first. High school and life is hard and filled with challenges. Take days off when you need them. Don't take that extra AP class that you know will make your life miserable. Surround yourself with people who make you self-confident, not self-conscious. Do spontaneous things that make you happy, like taking a beach day or going up north to ski. Life is short, and you need to take care and love yourself first before you can for anyone else. Thank you.
Wow. That was just incredible from all three of those amazing young women. And actually, what Olivia just had to talk about really segments us into the last part of our discussion tonight. And that's really about work-life balance. And so first, we're going to hear from Sheryl Sandberg, who, as you know, wrote the book Lean In, a little bit about what she thinks about it, but most of all, I think Olivia gave us the best message, which is to take care of yourself and to take care of the people that you love. So if we can hear from Sheryl, and then we'll talk a little bit more about work-life balance.
You tell women not to leave before they leave. What do you mean by that?
You know, a young woman came to see me at Facebook once, and she started asking me all these questions about how I balance, you know, kids and work. And she looked kind of young, so I said, do you have a baby? She said, oh, no. I said, well, are you thinking about having a child? She said, oh, no. She started laughing. She said, I just graduated from college. I don't even have a boyfriend.
So what you're saying is women aren't going for opportunities because they're afraid of the work-life balance they'll ultimately face. Yes. So they keep from going for big jobs because they think, gee, if I do a big job, I'll never be able to have a family. And you say, go for the big job and deal with family later?
Yeah, I feel very strongly that all of us have to make these personal decisions when we have that child. You have to decide, are you going to be a work-at-home mom, or you're going to be a work-in-the-office mom? But until then, you should lean in, keep your foot on the gas pedal, because it turns out if you do that, you might get promoted. You might make enough money to afford childcare. You might have a more interesting job. You might get promoted to a level where there's more flexibility.
And you might have the leverage you need to make demands so that your work actually complements your family life. On the other hand.
So I have to say, as someone who had both of my children when I was Attorney General, I was 6 months pregnant with our daughter Kate when I became unexpectedly Attorney General. And then my kids were really young when I went to the United States Senate to serve there. I just have to say to our panel, I know we talk about work-life balance, but I'm not sure I would describe it as balance. Sometimes I feel like it's a little bit like standing on your head. But let me start with you, Sarah. I know you have 4 children. Mm-hmm. So how have you been able to, coach this incredible team and be at the top level of coaching and still be a mom and still have that kind of balance in your life, or whatever it is? Maybe it's not quite balanced.
You can't stress out about 3 months down the road. Just do like a day at a time, a week at a time. Like she said, if you hustle and you get promoted and you make enough money then you can get the help that you need. You really have to get help. You have to take your breaks when you can. My job, I have some really long hours in some months, and then I have some months that are pretty good. So I have to enjoy those months and try to get more grounded with all the kids and do more in those months. Like June is good, August is good, September is pretty good, and then the others, you know, but aren't that good. So
basketball season or something like
so
that?
That gets long, but like I've said, every job has got give and take, but most importantly, I work as hard as I can in the hours that I'm at Brown or doing something for Brown, but I work really hard, and it's a struggle to work my job in order to live and not let it consume me, which is difficult because it's so result-driven, but it's a job, and my family's more important, and I just try to rely on the people around me that can help me. I also try to bring my children to the events that, when they were younger, was a little bit easier. Now my oldest twins are 17, but I bring my daughter on road trips and expose her to great role models. Every woman on my team that is studying something amazing and has such a great personality and doing a Division I sport. So I try to incorporate some life lessons and bringing them along and just do the best I can.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I have to say my kids are actually glad they're not doing parades anymore, but I used to drag them along too. I want to ask the rest of the panelists to weigh in on this, on this issue, and how do you do it when you're trying to balance or just try to make time to make sure that you can have that family life and also have a high-powered job? So you want to hop in, Dianne, and we'll go down.
Yeah, so I've never been comfortable with that quote or that expression of work-life balance. It's just never resonated with me.
I feel the same way. That's why I think.
So I can't. I'm not usually popular when I answer this question. I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe that you either have the discipline and the focus to set your priorities, and your priorities are life, and work is part of that, or it's not part of that. And you need to limit the amount of priorities that you can manage. And on any given day, one of those priorities is going to trump the other one. And your job is to discern and make sense of and use your judgment about where you need to really focus that. And I know I'm oversimplifying, but that really has been what it's been about for me. If I tried to figure out was I doing work in the right proportion to my life, I would have tripped over myself a lot.
And let's face it, some days would have been better than others, depending on what the priority that day, a sick child or a presentation you had to make.
When you know that your priority is that you have to take care of your children and you need to earn a living because you're the sole provider for those children and you want to take care of yourself, it's when you know that those three things are the central most important thing of you, it makes saying no to everything else very simple. But when you don't know what your 2 or 3 or maybe 4, but probably not 4 priorities are, then you just don't know how to clear boundaries around that. At least that's how it worked for me.
Alisha?
I agree with Dianne 110%, and it took me a long time to get to this point. When I raised my hand for the job that I'm in now, I had an 11-month-old, and I thought, this is my opportunity, but I have an 11-month-old. What do I do? And I thought, okay, whatever happens, it's gonna be our normal. So I'm gonna go for it, and I'm gonna do it, and that was 11 years ago, and I'm glad that I did, but it was hard. And I don't believe in work-life balance, and we were talking about it before. I think there's no such thing. I think sometimes you have to give work 110%, and sometimes you have to give your family 110%. And I used to I'd sweat when my son was sick, and somebody had to stay home, and I'd think, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? And, I'd call everybody, and I'd feel so guilty about calling people to help. And then I realized, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay, because tomorrow that person might need help. And it's okay to talk about it. You don't have to be a superhero. You do not have to be Wonder Woman. You can't do it all. And so sometimes that balance shifts to your family, and sometimes it shifts to work, and hopefully there are days in between that feel a little more balanced, that you get home and you can have dinner. But you find ways along the way to figure out some shortcuts. whether it's making meals ahead of time or saying, you know what, we're ordering takeout tonight because that's just the way this night's going because you've got practice and I have to work late. Or you put the kids to bed and you work afterwards. But I think that you have to feel comfortable with yourself and where your own priorities lie. And you have to find time. I didn't find time for a long time for myself and my family. It was, I gave everything I had to my job because I felt like I had to prove myself every day, that I had to work harder, that I had to work harder to the men in the room, than the men in the room. And then I realized, wait a minute, I've got the job. I've got the job. I just need to evolve in this job. And I'm gonna be better for everybody if I'm happy at home and with my life and feel like that I'm doing the right thing by them as well.
Yeah, I would agree with what Alisha and Dianne both said. I mean, it's definitely a challenge. I personally have 2 young children. My son is 4 and my daughter is 7. And I travel for my job a lot, and my husband is an airline pilot. So thankfully, we have a lot of grandparents that help and a village of neighbors.
My mom's in the audience. I can relate to this.
Yes. Yeah. But, you know, it's not always easy to ask for help, for sure. And I think that's key, you know, making sure that you don't feel guilty about reaching out. And also don't feel guilty when you have to focus on work or something that's really important. We have similar industries in that being in public relations and the news, it's often 24/7, and I can hear my 7-year-old daughter in my ear telling me at 9 o'clock at night to stop emailing. And there is guilt with that, but it brings me back to when I was younger, and I saw both of my parents working very hard, and I probably gave them the same attitude that my daughter gives me. But it did teach me that if you work hard, you can succeed, and like Sheryl Sandberg said, you will figure it out. So it ebbs and flows, but just know that, you know, balance is important if you can achieve it, but you probably won't every day, and that's okay. Just take it, you know, one day at a time.
Sandy, I want to ask you about something Olivia said in this context of this conversation. I think it's a really important issue of taking care of yourself, meaning you started this business, high-powered job. It had to be pretty intense, just like everyone's job up here. How do you find the time to manage your time so that you do have opportunities to do other things that you love?
I stink at it.
I love the honesty.
I really do. We talk about it all the time. I don't know what work-life balance is, and my children have 4 legs. Okay, those are the ones, and you know, I don't know what would happen if they had 2. Seriously, but even with my children, I mean, I have the advantage because I own the company. I take them to work with me, so you know, my kid's not sick. But you know, if they are sick, I'm taking care of them, right? But it's hard because I forget to do things for myself. Yeah. And because you get so absorbed in everything else. And yeah, I'm that person that, you know, at 7 o'clock at night that still has the phone attached to it, because it's just a way of life now. I think that was probably one of the worst things that were ever invented, was the cell phone, because it totally has disconnected a family unit. You know, I mean, right. You need to force yourself to get back into that. So the answer is, I failed at that one.
Well, I prefer to call it a work in progress, because I think we're all a work in progress on this one. And, you know, I mentioned that my mother's in the audience, but basically, I'll tell you one thing, having been through this myself and still through it, is don't be afraid to ask for help. I think sometimes as women, we feel like we have to do it all, and you know, that we have to appear this superwoman, and the reality is that we're human, and there's a lot of people out there that can help you. And in my life, it's really been my family and my friends, and you don't want to be my neighbor because I might ask you for help, okay? But you can't be afraid to raise your hand and say, hey, can we work together on this, and I need some help. And I don't have it all, even though kind of feel like you should have it all. So I want to wrap up this night, because I want to get to each of our panelists on an important question that I like to think about sometimes. And that is, if I could take you back in time, and I could take you back and you could visit with your younger self. You were in high school, and a young woman in high school, and knowing everything that you know now and what you've accomplished, what advice would you give your younger self? Sarah?
Was this given to me in advance? Did I miss that? This is a tough one.
It was, but I'm willing to go to Sandy because she already told me, and then we'll come back to you. How's that?
Go.
First of all, especially for those of you that are still in high school or are just entering into college, your first job out of college is primarily going to be based on your GPA and a really good interview. And your first 2 years in college, although very tempting, especially if you are away from home for the first time, you're really kind of feeling your oats around, and you're trying, you're having a social life, and you're away from the folks for the first time, and your GPA may be like your last priority at that point. Your first 2 years are your most important years to establish a GPA, because the junior year and the senior year get 5 times harder, and the courses are a lot easier in the first 2 years, and the way that the system is, it kind of weights them all the same way. So however tempting it is to really kind of slack off on the first 2 years in college, don't. Those are probably the best years that you really need to focus and really get that strong GPA. And then the junior and senior year, you're actually kind of really liking the courses at that point, because you've really kind of developed what you want to be when you grow up, type of thing. So that's number one. I would say don't mess around your first 2 years. I mean, have fun. Don't get me wrong, okay? I mean, have fun. You don't study all the time, but really know that your GPA is gonna matter those first 2 years. And then finally, I would tell myself, don't buy the Pop-Tarts. So
I love it. I love it. So McCall, what would you tell your younger self?
When I think back about starting my career, one theme that really resonated today that I think ties into this is raising your hand, but also asking for what you want and what you believe you deserve based on the contributions that you've made, whether it's to your team, to your company. And I heard a stat that was really compelling just recently about pay and women negotiating their salaries. And I think we all have a responsibility to help close that gap with confidence. And what the stat was that 50% of men negotiate their salary when they get their first job, and 7% of women do. And I was part of that 7%, probably because I was so happy at the time to not be living off my parents who are here somewhere, and happy that I'm still not. But it definitely, can set you back throughout your career, because you're starting off at a place where maybe you shouldn't be, because you have the skills to bring to the table, and you deserve more. So I think don't just wait to raise your hand, ask for what you want and what you deserve, and be confident, and that will carry throughout your whole life.
Yeah. Sarah?
I've had some time to think about this. I would have told myself to not freak out as much as I used to about the losses in athletics, and I mean to care, but not to, I used to really take them really hard, and the failures that I've had, or the disappointments that I had when I was young, and I continue to have, and I've always had, that those all go into this whole thing to make you stronger and resilient. And part of the leadership is being resilient. Muffet McGraw was up here at the beginning of this whole thing. Notre Dame was recruiting me when I was a junior in high school, and I was like so excited. And she flew out to see me play a high school game. No, it gets bad. And and then she told me later that night that she thought I wasn't good enough. So that was a little crushing. She was wrong. I mean,
I would say based on that uniform on BC's wall, she definitely was wrong.
I think she knows what she's doing. But no, but all of those different ups and downs, I handled them much better as I got older. And, you know, they all make you part of who you are and make you stronger and more successful. So that's what I would have told myself back then.
Thanks. Alisha.
To McCall's point, and this is just tangible advice for a moment, I was someone who just said, yes, thank you, and never negotiated or asked for more because, and I do believe in gratitude, absolutely, I've been grateful for every opportunity that's been presented to me, but I never felt confident enough to say, this is what I feel like I deserve in this job, this is what I feel like I need. And I think part of that comes from being able to speak well and to feel like you actually have those skills. So I would take the opportunity, and this is just a small piece of tactical advice, to be able to practice that, to take speaking classes, to be able to do that in college and to get involved in things that you can do so that you feel comfortable in your own shoes and that you feel like when you get to the table that you can actually speak well and advocate for yourself in that way. It's a really simple way to just be able to have that self-encouragement. I would say I'm somebody who was shy, and I think I would go back and say, don't be so shy because you belong in this room just as much as the next person. Don't make yourself small. Sit in front of the room, raise your hand, set goals, dream those dreams, and just go for it. Do not sit back.
Awesome. Dianne?
Yes, I would tell myself, do not give 5 minutes of your life to people who will withhold their approval of you.
Oh, God. So well said. You know what? I couldn't say it any better. We have had an incredible panel, so please join me in thanking these great women leaders who have shared their insights and their experiences with us tonight. So, I almost forgot the most important part. We don't have a lot of time, but we're going to take 1 or 2 questions from the audience, and then, because I know you guys have been here for a while, but we want to give you a chance to have just 1 or 2 questions for our panel. Oh, in the back.
Okay, well, I just have a question. What kind of Pop-Tart was it? Hello? Oh. What kind of Pop-Tart was it?
It was brown sugar cinnamon, like...
All right, great question. One more question we have back there.
I have one. Hi, I'm Grace. I'm a senior at Bishop Guertin. My question is, what advice would you give to high school students that are considering running for leadership roles, whether it be in clubs or student government or sports?
Awesome. I'm gonna answer that one and then have everyone else jump in, but you've heard it tonight. Practice public speaking and learn to speak and be willing to go up to people you don't know and introduce yourself. It's something that I had to learn when I ran for office, but to actually go up to a stranger and to say to them, hi, my name is Kelly Ayotte, and I'm running for US Senate, and this is why I'm running. But there's a lot of kids at your school that you don't know as well as maybe your close friends, but expand them, and you'll meet some incredible people along the way by doing that. And I would just say to all of you, just most of all, be willing to put yourself out there. And even if you don't succeed at first, I've won an election, I've lost an election. just the act of doing it, the people you meet along the way, and getting yourself out there, to me, is worth doing. Anyone want to add to that?
I would say just to get involved in as many things as you can. I played 3 sports. I wish I did some other things, but whatever groups you can get involved with, you keep getting connections and experiences. You know, there are people in this room I haven't seen in years. A young woman that I recruited over here, Nikki Hayner, who could really stroke the 3-ball. You know, I hadn't seen you in I don't know how many years, 6 maybe, but you know, you're always bumping into people that you recruited, you played with, played against. I played with your
played with my cousin
when we were 16 years old. So it's just it's an unbelievable vehicle to you know, unite you with other people. So
yeah, I agree. And creating that kind of network, I think everyone up here has created a network of people that they've known in their lives, but also getting to know new people that maybe aren't in your circle that can teach you something that you can learn from. That is an incredible part of growing and being part of an organization or being a leader of an organization. Well, I know that our time is closing here, but I just want to thank all of you for being on the panel, and we have had an incredible night. I want to thank also Emma, Jesse, and Olivia. And I just want to end with a quote from Sheryl Sandberg, and that is, in the future, there will be no female leaders, there will just be leaders. And I know, as I look out into this audience, and I know the incredible young women that are in this room, that in this audience, we have future business leaders, we have future leaders in the nonprofit sector, we have future senators and members of the House of Representatives, and I'm quite confident that in this room we also have a future woman president. So I am excited to be part of this. So with that, we have a very special presentation. So I would like to welcome Aria O'Connell back to the stage and just thank all of you for being such a great audience.
What a great night. Before we make our check presentation to the representative from Bridges, I want to take a moment to say thank you. First, a huge thank you to each and every one of our sponsors. Without them, tonight would not have been possible. And a very special thanks to Sandy Cleary and SLC Group Holdings for being our lead sponsor tonight. Second, thank you to someone who is more than just a coach to me, Brad Craig, who put a great amount of time into planning and organizing this event. Without you, we would not be here tonight. Also, thank you to tonight's student speakers, Emma, Jesse, and Livy. You are all amazing young women. And anyone who says our generation isn't paying attention to the world around us, listening to you tonight proves them wrong. And we are all inspired by your presentations. And finally, to Senator Ayotte and our incredible panel, referring to you as a group of extraordinary and inspiring women is a huge understatement. Thank you doesn't quite seem enough, as your example, wisdom, passion, and commitment to mentoring the next generation of young women striving to change the world has been inspiring. As a token of our appreciation, we'd like to present each of you with a gift to commemorate the evening, and thank you for being role models to all of us. Now I'd like to ask Bishop Guertin President Linda Broder to join us on stage, along with Bridges Board President Sarah Heinonen, for a special presentation. As you know, we have selected Bridges, a nonprofit agency dedicated to helping victims of domestic and sexual violence, to receive a portion of the proceeds raised at tonight's event. On behalf of all of tonight's sponsors, the Bishop Guertin girls basketball team, as well as the Bishop Guertin community. We are proud to present Bridges with a check for $20,000 to continue their important work. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a great pleasure sharing this night with you. If you have not yet gotten a gift bag, there are still some left, so get one on the way out. Thank you for making this a very special night, and we'll see you next year.